All right. Well, I am so glad you're able to do this with me. So I guess first off, could you tell me a little bit just about yourself in general, like your background and, you know, like what you like to do as far as your profession and out of your profession?
Yeah. Okay. Well, my name is Shea Jones, and I have been. Okay, where do I start? I at 16 was that person who loved high school, but I told my parents I was like, I'm moving to LA, and I did, and I actually started on the other side of the camera. And I thought that's what I really, really, really wanted to do until I was able to get, genuine like success with it. And being on set, I suddenly realized that I was close to where I wanted to go, but that wasn't it, because sitting in a trailer and watching everyone run around and do all these things, and I just sit there, wait, and then someone's trying to like feed me a grape, and I'm like, no, but watching the people and like watching, and figuring out like, wow, what does that guy do? He seems very stressed. And then being like, oh, he's the first AD. Like, okay, now I'm like putting this stuff together, and where my brain was and what I realized what I like to do was I'm a fixer is what I could say it and sum it up really quickly and it's something where it's either in you or it's not. It's not really trainable. I mean, there's things that you can know to look for, but I'd say you have 0.2 seconds to make a genius plan that you might not have in that moment, but you just have that instinct. And that's what I really responded to with knowing that I like this industry, is because I'm someone that likes to just be thrown into the hot seat. And that's when I actually will provide the best results, when it's lax. And, doing the office 9 to 5, very important, thank God for other people, but I couldn't. I would never be a good employee. I would always not be what they would want. So that's what I knew that head on. And then while I was living in LA, I spent like 6.5 years out there. And that's when I realized that I love being outside, camping. Like I would go camping like every 2 weeks just because of all the different national parks. I mean, it was gorgeous. And like I would drive 6 hours to the Yosemite, just spend an hour and drive 6 back. And that's when I realized, okay, for me being in LA, I'm leaving LA a lot. Why is that the case? And I grew up in Peachtree City, Georgia, up until then, and my family was still here. So, I started 2 years in college out there, and I was like, this is very expensive out of state, and I'm gonna come back. And so I got really, really lucky with the film industry timing, with the Georgia tax incentive, and it was already a thing, but it wasn't at the level at all. And so then I went to Kennesaw State, and I finished my degree in media and entertainment. At the time, it was communication. Well, I don't know. And being in Kennesaw, the cool part about that was how close it was to Atlanta, where I was someone that I don't love living right in the center of a city, but I like to be close to it, because it's like I know I'm going to need to be there, and I know I need to be there often, but I don't want to wait an hour for a grocery store parking lot spot. So right when I graduated, I actually started, and I was in the phase where I think a lot of people are when they first graduate is, well, you're a loser if you don't have a job. So that pressure of, oh my gosh, like I need a job. But really with production, that's the sad part, is you don't really necessarily call a company. Like, yes, you can go work for Warner, like broadcast, where you might be always in the studio or only at like doing post-production or something, where you're like put in a hole, and you're not going to get that like on-set experience. You're not going to get that, wherever you want to go, whether you want to be a casting director. It's like, okay, well, how are you going to get in the room to see a casting director know that you have an eye? And that's where it's like anyone else that gets a business degree. You graduate and you have your resume, and you start getting your cover letter, and you reach out to all of the hundreds and hundreds of things on LinkedIn. Well, with production, it is a small circle that they don't like to open the door. They are it's like a love-hate for this, because love it to a degree where it has that nostalgia of it still being like only the elite are really playing here. And like it's that sense of like, we are like nice. But then at the same time, I'm like, okay, like let's understand that everyone has a need. Like I'm someone that I now, with my business and how fast it like scaled up, it was like, okay, well, I'm in a place where I could use a lot of hands. And I don't necessarily I have the people that are way too skilled to where I don't want to call them to do these things, but I have to trust. And I have to have a level, and trust is everything, I would say, absolutely, because no matter what, everything is freelance, where you're always looking around your shoulder. But the best part about that is you will never have a second day of your job. Every day is different. So each day is your first day, no matter what it is. And you could feel so confident in how much you prepped it. And you're like, this is gonna be cakewalk. And then that's the day that, oh my gosh, like everything went wrong. Like the power line doesn't work. It's raining and it's an outdoor shoot. The heating doesn't work in the A Talents trailer. The Video Village, LA can't see receiving footage of it. And all of that happens like this. And there's one person where everyone goes like this to be like, can you answer? Like, what are we doing? And it's the producer. And that's when I learned that I was like, okay, so I'm gonna do the up build way, like the old style for film, not any other industry. You can't do this, but you start as a PA, which is a production assistant. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, you are just anything and everything they need, you're doing it. So at one moment, it might be take the trash out. At the next moment, it might be, hey, I need you to, call talent. So then you're holding them in between this hallway. You get such a good way of understanding what each department has to do. Mm-hmm. Because as a PA, you're not really held a lot of responsibility. So there's a lot that's good with that, because you get to just be like, okay, I have this task, I'm gonna do it. And in the meantime, I'm gonna learn at what the heck is a DIT. And so you like start to put all of this together, and then you build your relationships with maybe a producer or a PM, and then they'll keep hiring you and you keep going. I've seen it where people legitimately PA for 5 years. I was very much not going to be able to do that.
Right.
If you go the film, like movie, like actual like feature film route, and you want to be a producer on Suicide Squad, mm-hmm. you're gonna have to do the PA for 5 to like 7 years. Mm-hmm. Now, if you want to do more like commercial and documentaries and even EPK, like I did the whole EPK behind the scenes trailer for the last Suicide Squad.
Yeah, cool.
And so I'm on set every day on Suicide Squad. I'm like seeing everything crazy, but I'm not on the feature of it. I'm just selling the movie.
Right.
So I'm doing and conducting all the interviews with all of the, department heads, but also doing it with all of the talent. So that was my way of still being at the highest level of the field that I'm in this industry, with not having to just immediately jump to doing just PA, because I'm someone that's like, when I know that I have my like teeth a little bit sunk, not that I'm saying I'm too good for it. You'll still see me. If you ever come on set, you'll see me like with holding water bottles, like I don't care. Title means nothing to me. It's just, let's get it done. And I think that's where I started being like, okay, let's get it done. I'm now calling out future problems mm-hmm. before the second AD notices. So like my brain needs to like do more, like, or it's gonna freak out. And so the combination, I would say, of that with me starting on front of the camera mm-hmm. and then seeing where I wanted to go in production and doing the producing side, it was really, really, really easy and apparent for me to fall into and see that directing is truly my end goal. I would say right now where I'm currently, I have directed, I've done that, but my resume and what I know that I'm more known for with clients would be 1,000% producer, just because I've been doing that longer. The directing is very, very new. It was something that it's not common for a producer to be a director. I always argue against why. I think if anything, it would help more, because from being on a producer, I have hired directors, or a director already came with the brand. where they're being very difficult and I don't want to listen to the creative agency, even though without the creative agency, we wouldn't even have a job. Or I'm going to ask for something $20,000 outside of the budget. And those are moments that are like, come on, dude. But like, he's the director, or she. And so to me, understanding production to a genuine like level and being able to, I think because I loved, acting in my acting classes, like I still go to them. I love them, and picking up and getting the best out of the subject on the other side is something that it just became very naturally for me to fall into. Because in the producing of, like, I produced the Aladdin promo with Will Smith, and it's called I'm the producer, yet I'm the one that's talking to Will, and I'm like, all right, well, here you go, like, you're about to get like step back into it, like, this is the first line, the prop's gonna come in. So there's things where, because movies are way more broken down like the way we all know it, where a producer would never tell Will what to do with his hands or command his voice differently. That would be the director. But those moments in commercially, they get blended, the titles, where maybe on the call sheet, I'm only producer, but really, if you wanted to break it down, that is what happened, directed and produced. Okay, yeah, did I just go completely off of your question?
No, you just technically answered a bunch of questions at once. I guess leading like right off of what you just said, you kind of sounded like you like to direct more than you actually like to produce, even though it sounds like you wouldn't have had maybe the love for directing without production. And I guess my question is, what are the best like caveats or the best, some of the lows to either, but what are some of the benefits why you love directing so much and why that is such an end goal for you?
So a couple with that is, I would say it's not necessarily that I love directing way more than producing, and kind of I think what it is because directing is so new, that it's new in the essence of like, it's been like a year and a half compared to like 10 of full production, right. Where it's to the benefits of directing that I could easily be able to share would be, now that I do have my own company, a production company, there's moments where like I have maybe 6 shoots in 1 week, or maybe I have 2 in post-production that I'm having to see through with like company 3 and the clients. I have to be on set at 1, and then I have 2 that are prepping to start. Well, with production, you are the first one on the job and you are the last one on the job before it's closed and over. And with directing, I have the ability I still come in earlier, obviously, than like a gaffer or like random other people than that, but I'm not bogged down with where is the restroom trailer going. I'm not thinking about the paperwork, accounting, the location agreements, because that is my number one rule for myself, is that unless it is very, very small, like an interview, like for a sports feature, I never do both jobs. I will always hire a producer when I'm directing, and vice versa. Because the reason why is there will always, no matter what, it might go great at the end of the day, but no matter what, there was one moment where one job failed. Okay. And I don't like that, because there's 2 different types of frame. You as a director, you are looking at the frame and you are making sure that everything in the frame is there because it makes sense, that the way the talent's reading it, you're checking in with the agency. I am not thinking about lunch. I am not thinking about like, oh crap, I have to get that overage submitted, because they're totally different. Like, the producer wants the director to just hurry up and shut up. You're done. Can we just be done? I don't want overtime. And the director's like, can we try that one more time? Right. So but then I would say 2 folds to that. The caveat of a producer over directing would be, you truly own and run the project. There's been many times where I'd say a director was hired or brought on where they didn't do anything except arrive on the day, and then maybe they talked to talent a little bit, but they didn't pick the colors, they didn't pick the set design, they didn't pick the wardrobe. And that's where the production company ends up having to fill all of that. And to know and be proud of like when like recently like just did like a Disney Plus TV show where it's with Marvel and it's superpower women, and it had like Zoe Saldana and Chris Pratt and all these different people, and James Gunn was like my favorite person just because I missed him from Suicide. Was the fact that the show was so huge. And the best part about it was the fact of it being where, okay, like you see it all, you see every department up and they're doing it, the lights are on and the stage lights are off, and you did it. Like you look at your team and you're like, without like us, like wouldn't work. And I think the love of the film community becomes, you'll know if you're bit like that, like truly. And that is my biggest advice that I've always said to everyone is it can look a lot nicer on the outside looking in, 1,000%. Like, oh, you just get to like shoot movies with like talent. Like, no, there's a lot of stress. But to that is you'll know if you love it, because that stress is almost comforting in the weirdest way. Like you're like, okay, my head's on fire, the roof's on fire, but why am I smiling? Like, it's like, let's go. And that's where, I mean, I would love to have you on as like, if you would want a PA or anything on something, so you can understand a little bit more in the essence of like production has to be the people. Camera won't talk to G&E unless production makes them. So I could trust that my DP is going to call the key grip and call his first AC and get the gaffer, and they're all going to communicate before our tech scout. However, that would never happen. So it's like being like, okay, having to have those conversations and not just thinking about making them do it, but it's you're having one ear on. Like I have 4 AirPods, and do you want to know why? Because it is for 4 different lines. And so I'm like listening to them talking about lighting while I'm doing a whole other thing over here, and then I hear one thing, and that's when you know, where you're like, okay, I hear that one thing I didn't like. Now I'm gonna pop back into this conversation. It's just fight or flight mode. And directing is way more, if you're confident, if you're in a place where you're like, okay, I know this creative, I know this talent, or I know of them, and I think they're gonna be fine, I'm okay, like I can do this. But if you're having any doubt creatively going into it, then that's when I would always make sure you have the strong AD on. There's been times where I know that a person can be one day a really skilled director, but at that time they haven't gotten there yet. But I want to give them more opportunities, because that's how this works, where if you don't get anything on your resume or any type of opportunity, you won't ever be able to grow in it. So I would give them an opportunity, but I'm also like, hey, just know that I'm going to hire AD then, because I want to make sure that that one is so solid. For any moment if you're panicking or you're doing something, I know we're good. So I would say those are the 2 biggest differences on that part. But producer, it's something, gosh, it's funny. Like I always thought in the last like year, I was like, oh, I would definitely pick directing like over. But now that you're like asking me this, it's like I have such a love for producing that like I don't know. They're totally different. It's like left and right brain.
You almost like wearing both hats, really?
Well, it's almost near to impossible for me to not, but I won't act on one if I know that I shouldn't. So if I am just the producer on this set, then yes, I might go make a comment to the DP and be like, hey, is it just me, or it's a little hot, like a little overexposed, like on her left knee. But that is coming from a producer mindset, because not a director's mindset in the, are we sure we want it to be a tan shirt? Like that's more director. And my comments in those are, I'm just making sure the client knows that I'm looking out for their best interest, that it's not overexposed, you know? So it varies different, or all of a sudden you jumped out of your lane or you're in your lane. It's one of those things where you just learn it as it comes.
That's really cool. Thank you. Because that's really helpful to know, like, that both are not only just tangible, but both of them are almost needed, almost a necessity. And it sounds to me like, especially if somebody like, for instance, if myself or anybody else was trying to get into the production or directing kind of world, but they want to do it more entrepreneurial like yourself, instead of, like, let's say I was like, oh, I just want to go work for Disney directly, that going into Disney, I can't expect to but be wearing multiple hats, kind of like you said. I'd almost have to kind of like you said, stay in my lane, it sounds like. Whereas if I wanted to be more entrepreneur, I almost have to wear more hats, but I also take on a lot more, seems like more responsibility at the same time.
That is what 1,000%. You got it completely right, because, you know, I never want to talk bad or even look bad at someone that goes, you know, I don't want to do more than one thing. I do want to go work for Disney and I want to start there. And all kudos, because we need that. And it does come with, you just get to focus on that. You get to learn, and that's it. And when you go home, there's not stress. You just get to go home. But doing it as an entrepreneur it's your baby. No one's going to build this other than you. So are you going to choose to stay up tonight until 2 a.m. to make sure you do all the work, the office work that you didn't have time for? You know, it came natural to me, and that's all I can say of that's how I responded to it, and I knew that's what I wanted to do. But I wouldn't definitely say that it's easy or that it's something that it's meant for everyone. But when you know you have that hustle and the drive and the self-motivation, then I would say having the freedom and knowing in yourself that you can do whatever you want. The sky is the limit. And I know that it's, especially coming out of school, the way that I'm talking right now, I probably would have said to someone like, yeah, okay, you're like a hippie that believes in a different world. What are you talking about? But it is possible, and especially in this industry. And for me, before directing, I was producing and I camera operated.
Okay.
And that's when the framework of it and me understanding my technical knowledge, where two things were happening at like one time, where when I was producing, I would get an equipment list and they're all the craziest names in the entire world. And there's no pictures or anything. And I was like, no, it's producer. This is me as a coordinator. I was like, I don't even know what this is. So how do I know how to cut $400 out of this equipment list? So I had to learn it all. And I had to do it for me to know when to know if this gaffer's trying to screw me a little bit on the budget. Or do we really need that light? Because I understand the setup now and I understand where that light's going. Okay, I'm not gonna fight that, I get it. And so for camera world to go into that too, it was very important to me, because I never like to sound like I don't know what I'm talking about, especially in regards with someone else's money. So it's not my money, it's not my budget. You're trusting me with $600,000 to make sure you get this deliverable by this time, and that's that. Well, I can't really do that with me not knowing what a Phantom does, you know? So that's where, you know, I don't even know. It's crazy. Like, I'm trying to remember, like, I just was addicted, and I still am. But I mean, like, there was no reason for me to have to know these equipment. Like, no one was telling me to. I didn't have a boss. I didn't have someone to report to. It was, okay, what am I doing?
Mm-hmm.
And all right, I'm gonna figure this out. And then it was me, all right, you know, I don't have anything to do right now. I'm gonna put 2 hours in and learn Genie. Okay, now I'm gonna learn, you know, all the different departments and what is the difference between, you know, a set construction versus set dress, and do they intermix, and knowing each rate, what comes with each title. I mean, it's a lot of things that you'd expect yourself to learn like that, but it's all interchangeable so quickly. So on one shoot, there is a standard for, you know, a gaffer rate where it's $650 for 10 hours. But let's say this is a non-union job that I just got and it has not a great budget. Okay, well now I'm gonna have to call and get, maybe I'm putting it all in my showbiz as the software I use. And I'm like, okay, we're about like 1,000 over. Now I'm gonna have to start cutting back. Well then, okay, where do I cut back from? Now I have to look at, okay, location, I can't, blah, 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 and break it all down. So like I said, it's the best part, and kind of the craziest part is you'll never have a second day to your job.
It's always a first day, almost like you just constantly something new. I mean, that's one of the reasons I love the idea of it. It's not like the idea of the work of it. It's because you have a set, sounds like you have a set goal. You have you know what the end product is. You don't try to do rinse and repeat, because rinse and repeat's not going to work. It's sounds like something you got to keep moving forward until the product's done. One of the biggest questions I think like as far as somebody that's at my stage, as far as in classes in school, is what kind of advice do you have for myself or anyone else trying to get into be an entrepreneur or a director or producer? Like, what, as far as education or as far as on the job experience before graduating, does somebody probably should have?
Yeah. Okay. So what I can say is there will be, it depends what you're willing and willing not to do. So I started a job where it was like hourly, and it changed very quickly because it just wasn't my MO. But it was the stress of, oh no, I've got to graduate, I got to get a job. And so I started at a post-production house in Atlanta, and it had something to do with it, but I was really, at the end of the day, like a glorified like social media person type thing. And they didn't really, it wasn't what was the job explaining. And so I realized, okay, this is not it. So unless you know of a company, of like a media company directly, like in Atlanta, or unless you're wanting to move or something, that you would really like, and you would want to maybe send them your resume directly. If you're wanting to go into the freelance world of media in Atlanta, I would say immediately start PAing.
Okay.
And I can definitely help you with that. And the biggest reason as to why is that's how you build your network of your people in your world. Each time you're on a set, if you kill it, here's the thing about like the movies and TV world, you will be PAing all the time because they need them all the time.
Oh, cool.
And it's not the best hours. It is not the best pay. Do not get me wrong, but it's one of those things where it's like, okay, now you just met 5 different PMs and 4 different coordinators, and that really is your resume.
Okay.
It's not the degree. It's sadly, unless you go towards a company. That's the thing I was gonna say, is like, if you wanted to work for Turner, then that's where your degree, and that is where all of that will come into fruition. But diving into the freelance world, I mean, there's guys that are way above me, like EPs on huge features that never even went to college. So I hate that. I hate to even say it because I'm still pro school. But it's really getting out there, meeting the people that are doing it, and just learning and absorbing. There really isn't anything that I would say, don't throw your money at some of those things that you'll see online, like pay for a class and we'll get you don't do it. All gimmick. And, kind of like what you did with me is you found me on LinkedIn. And I think a lot of people need to understand that anything they want to do is right there. It's just thinking in a different way of how to get to it, or thinking in a way of, who do I know that I might not even know that I know, that knows someone.
Right.
It's like reworking puzzle pieces at all times. Like, that's all it is. So my biggest recommendation would just get your hands dirty.
Okay. That's fantastic, because a lot of times, like, everybody says the word networking, but they don't really say anything past the word network. Like, every student knows the word network, and they know, it's ingrained in our brain with social media and the network. But a lot of people don't, or a lot of students don't really get the whole, like, okay, well, what do I do with this power? What do I,
Well, and when to do it. Yeah.
When to do it, right.
Because the biggest thing that I learned and didn't learn in school was the fact of, okay, when do you network because you need something immediately, or you're networking where you need nothing and you're just gonna stop by and just be like, hey, I just wanted to reach back out. And that was something that it evolves. But what I realized and what I learned was, when it comes to networking, that upon the first reach out, if you can find a way where you don't genuinely, it's it's fine if you still even need something, but then you think about it like the next time, like set a reminder right when you hang up, or if you meet that person in coffee, literally in like 2 to 3 weeks from that day in your phone, and just have it go off and say like, write them an email or send them like a random like note card or something. That's the stuff like when I've seen it actually work with networking, because it's like, oh, okay, wow, they like actually thought of me in a moment where they didn't even need anything. They just thought our new whatever was cool. You know, you can find any reason to reach back out to someone. Like,
okay, well, I mean, that sounds perfect. Like, so does reaching out or like touching base work also in the kind of job, like as far as referrals and leads and things like that as well for film, or is it more of you have to wait for somebody to get in touch with you?
so I would say like I'll follow you up with some people of like to reach out to and to send them like what you're interested in, and I'll show you. Let me write this down. I'll show you like an email of what to write into it, because I know you obviously, it's not like you have like a bunch of stuff to show, and that's the best part about a PA is like whoever's hiring the PAs, they have no expectations other than please show up. Like literally, like if you show up on time, you've already done the job. Now we just make sure you don't walk away and you're helpful. That just do not fit. But yeah, so I'll follow back up with that, because once you reach out to them, I would say if you don't get an immediate like feedback or anything, you know, time it out, but feel free to go back. How the film people work, they're super hot and cold, where I might text you like, in that moment I had 2 minutes and I'm like, yes, and then all of a sudden you reply, oh, maybe talk to you in a week.
Yeah.
So just to know that
Sounds like my boss right now.
Yeah.
My boss is so like that. I'll message. He'll give me like 10 messages. It'll look like a book, and then all of a sudden I respond, and I'll hear from him in 24 hours, and he'll say he's in Savannah. So,
you're like, oh, good update. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's definitely the same.
Yeah. So we kind of answered some questions about, or you answered some questions about the production, and as far as directing, and as far as like not only the job titles but the importance of them, as far as like moving up in a company, like what are the realities to it? And because a lot of people always think of a company and they think that it's always like time based, but is it directly, you know, yearly, or is it something more of, okay, it's just a matter of moving to a different company, or is it sometimes a matter of what you know?
So that's a little complicated to answer just because of this industry. We make it very abnormal. Okay. Technically, like when you start PAing, you have to look at yourself as your own company, because you don't work for a company. You are working for an LLC that is just created just for that movie. And in 4 months, that movie goes away. Okay, well, that means you don't have a job in 4 months. So with that, there's two many things. Okay, usually on a feature, are you wanting to go in that world, movie?
Yeah.
Or commercial? Yeah. Okay.
Well, it's kind of both. Like, so just to kind of say a background, I do wedding photography and videography, but that's more of a, you know, it's a source of income, but it's not necessarily.
Well, to say those pay a lot.
Yeah, they pay good, but it's not the area I'm trying to get into. I'm trying to get more towards possibly doing, you know, some movie and some, you know, it could be even short films. Short films are cool with me too. Because working for a big company is nice in the stability, but at the same time, kind of being my own entrepreneur in some form, there's some benefits and freedoms and flexibility there that I kind of like. So there's some parts of entrepreneur that are appealing.
Because the reason why I say it is because, like, for the big features, if you're gonna go down that route, you really do want to figure that out in the beginning, like it's day one. Just because if that is, let's say you 1,000% want to be the producer on the next big like Oscar movie, that would be where you have to get into DGA, the union, which That
Americans Guild of
is like
America,
the guy. Like that is like where you are now. Like I'm technically still in SAG from being an actor, and it's insane what I still have to deal with, and I'm not even doing anything anymore. I'm like, leave me alone. But for DGA is the reason why I say it is because you have to get a certain amount of days on set each year as a PA, and then a coordinator isn't technically a DGA position, but starting at a PM, you have to be in the DGA on a DGA movie. So if the director is in DGA, then it falls down the line. So if the director is there, then that means the producer has to be there, and the UPM, which the UPM in movies are like what I was talking about producer in commercial.
Okay.
So the UPM in a movie is truly the glue, the end all be all. Like if that UPM is not good, no matter what, the movie will be a show. It doesn't matter how good the producer is. It's so crazy. Like it's because no one knows, because everyone knows the word producer, even if they know nothing about this industry. But production manager it's unit production manager is what UPM stands for. But no one knows that. And I'm like, I hate it because like these people are so good. And the biggest difference, and I did not love being a PM just because in commercial world, all you're doing is paperwork and budget. And some people love it. Like I love that have people that love being a UPM and don't want to do anything else, because I'm like, the fact that I know I can be on set with the client and I turn around and they're just updating everything. I can go over there and watch right now, ask if like we are over budget from lunch that happened 10 minutes ago because they already uploaded the scanned receipt. Because that's always so important, because there's a game time decision moment on set where all of a sudden the client's like, okay, I didn't want to do it, but we are going to need to rent the really expensive car. Well, I have to know right then and there, do we have the money and can we make it work? And if I'm on my computer all day, well, who's dealing with the client on set? Who's making sure the crew's moving and running along? So that's why everyone has a position and everyone always has a job. And it doesn't matter what position it is because they're all so crucial. You take one out and it's like
falls apart.
Yeah, absolutely. So that would be the one reason why I would say you would want to figure that out in the front end, because if that is where you're wanting to go, you should get that in your way of thinking that, okay, you're going to have to know this is going to be a gruesome couple years. I'm going to have to PA nonstop. And I've seen it, and I've seen a lot of people be able to do it where they're able to be like, okay, couple years, insane, head down, here I go. But it does come with, it's one is a little bit more flashy in the beginning, and one, it all involves hard work. It all becomes stressful. You sound like you were definitely already bit, so welcome.
Yeah, because it's funny that you mentioned anything about Aladdin. This is not even on purpose. That's my cup. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
That was one goal I didn't get to work. I always wanted to work with Robin Williams.
Yes. Actually, he's one of my favorites in any movie. Just about any movie he's ever done. He's absolutely one of my favorites.
I agree.
So that was a lot of answers, a lot of topics. I've got some general questions, I guess, and they're probably pretty easy ones. They're very general. Where do you see yourself going from here?
Okay. I really, really, really would love to. The short-term goal would be to direct like a whole campaign for an automotive, just because there's no female director in the space, and it's crazy, right? And what blows my mind even more is this next fact is there's no females doing it, but females are. I'll send you all of these facts. It's insane. It took me so long to make this deck. I'll show you that, but females buy more cars than men, tenfold. They are the deciding factor when they're in a straight marriage or like whatever. The single, there's a different type of woman also now where you can be 32 and maybe you just have a dog and you don't have a husband or
yes.
kid. Yeah. And I still feel like the commercials, there's two options for women. One, the struggling mom with groceries.
Tradition.
Or two, basic new shorts walking past a fast car.
Okay.
And so I was like, and I love car rigs. Like that's like my favorite thing to like figure out a different way of creating a sequence of action. And it's different. Like I just did one for Bridgestone, and we had a custom robot slider where I would keep the tire locked, the stunt driver was going, and the parallax was kept as this camera was going straight into it. And we were using the wave camera, which it goes 420 frames per second at 4K.
Ooh, wow.
So we got like all this like mud and stuff like coming at it, and it was awesome. So I really, that's my short term, like, let's do that one, here we go. And then I would have to merge my, like, you know, that question when someone asks you, what would you do if it had nothing to do with this industry? Mine is 1,000% some type of something involved with crime. I'm like, I will interview a serial killer. I know it. But I would absolutely love to do a documentary. And the reason why I don't want to do that immediately is those are like a 4-year project. They're never like what they come off as. Like when you watch one, you're like, oh, that's maybe like a month. It takes a lot of time.
Well, there's so much research involved in. There's like when I look at one, I see like people going to actual sites and stuff, and I'll see everything from like interviewing multiple people, you know, through it. It's so cool.
Well, and it's on the prep side, it's like you think you know your story, right? And like you got it, and you like have your interview list, you have the budget, you got like the network, whoever's gonna buy it. Well, then it's like you do your first interview, and that interviewee says something that you weren't ready for or anticipating, and you're like, oh, that just opened a whole other can of worms. And it's like you don't know what to do. You're like, okay, well that would add 3 weeks to production. And then a month and a half to post-production, we don't have the money. Like, but then you're like, we need it. So that's where I'm like, love it. And I've been involved in documentaries on, like I did the Tupac one where they came here just for the Atlanta part. And then I did a CNN documentary where it was like an all-together piece of 13 minutes. So it wasn't, they call it a documentary, but to me, that's a feature. So we went to Peru and we did that, and it was amazing because I got to direct and produce both of that like at the same time, and that was very much stress, but great. So yeah, I would say that's my short and long term. I don't know what it is, but I don't have the wanting just yet, and I think it's probably my own hard-headedness of I don't want to get there until I'm ready. To really, really, really be able to step into the feature world. I wouldn't want, but the thing about me is like, I'm the best at being like, yeah, I know how to do that. And then like going around the corner and figuring it out if I know it's in a smart enough wheelhouse for me to do that in. Right. I also can easily admit, no, don't give me those hard drives. Do not give me that card reader. I don't want it because I'm not dumping the media. Like, you know, like I know that and I can do that, but for that one, I just would really, really want to be ready. And I think I got some years.
Heck yeah, that's fantastic. I'm glad that you already kind of know where you want to go, but you don't want to jump in it too quick, because I've got quite a bit of experience I need to get.
Well, trust me, I was right there and I was chomping at the bit, and then this level of like, oh, I seem like I know everything I want to do. This is very, very not recent. Like I was a struggling bus for many years of, you know, just figuring all this out. I mean, it's my airdrop. Ugh. But I appreciate this convo, and it's fun getting to know you and where you want to go. And I hope we stay in touch and just lean on me as much as you would want, or as little as you want, if you need anything. Yeah,
will do. It was great to get all this information that I can't just get by Google, you know.
I know.
I think I'm good on the recording. I'm just gonna end that real quick.